Welcome to the A Player Show with your host, me, Ugis, founder turned headhunter, and now the managing director of Recruiter Mill. And on the other line, we have the super producer, Kirill. Kirill, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. This time there was a lot of rain, so I'm good but not happy. And it's summer, right?
In today's show, we'll react to a job ad in the e-commerce space. This time it's for a media buyer role. I'll also share a client case study for how we hired a lead conversion designer for a 9-figure e-commerce brand. And I'll break down what I've learned in 10,000 hours of hiring within a few dozen minutes. So that's going to be a value-packed episode. But first, let's react to some founder takes on X. We always love hot takes. And this time it comes from Max. He has a really nice retention agency. I met him in person in San Diego last fall. Really cool guy, really kind guy, and someone who shares really good takes on X. He's talking about the dark side of running a 90-person agency. You can work from your laptop, good money, has a sense of purpose, but then he has 8-hour call days, burnout, pressure of having people depend on you, constant up and downs, imposter syndrome, angry client messages, getting pulled into fires every day. So he continues listing some of the kind of bad stuff about it. He says he wouldn't trade any of it, right? So the pros way outweigh the cons. Those people telling you, oh, laptop on a beach lifestyle is what I'm after. I want to do nothing. They're trying to sell you something, or at the very least, they're misinformed in my experience. I agree with that. I also run an agency. It doesn't have 90 people on it. We're 6 in total. Obviously, Max's agency is bigger. Then again, I think I have a slightly different approach where we have this kind of boutique approach. My personal ambition is to what I call a lifestyle performance business. So not lifestyle, right? Not laptop on a beach, hack together some nonsense that makes money for a while and then at any point could stop working. But work 5 hours a week and really brag about it. No, I work quite hard. At the same time, personally, I want to have the flexibility to travel, flexibility to be around my family, flexibility to fire clients if I don't feel like working with them, not take on projects that I don't believe in, not take on searches where I don't think the candidate will be really well served. Yeah, I would say our approaches to running a business are a bit different. And I don't want to have a 90-person agency or a 90-person any business of any kind. My initial reaction, I know we have a response from Brian Dice, his second appearance on the A Player Show, because he shares some awesome takes as well. I saw the first sentence of it and I thought, okay, he has a good point there. Ryan says, it sounds like Max is crushing, and he is, but it also sounds like he's scaled himself into no man's land. Might be true. That stage around 2 to 6 million is where all the challenges of an 8-figure business with a revenue and experience of a 7-figure business to support it. It sucks, but you can survive it. There's real freedom waiting for you on the other side. I guess what Ryan is saying, hey, go past this sucky period and you'll be fine. What I'm saying for myself is I don't want to get into the sucky period, and I'm fine to kind of limit earning potential of my company, but still get a really nice profit. And most of our clients are actually on this performance side of things. Makes sense that Brian says this, essentially saying you cannot outwork inefficiency. The sleepless nights and burnouts will catch up to you. Build systems, then hire the people to run the systems. I mean, he's preaching to the choir when it comes to the hiring A players. Ryan's advice is likely your job as a CEO should be to do nothing, and then you build systems and hire people so that you can do nothing. Obviously, it's a lot easier said than done. It takes many years in most cases, but you kind of take these areas of your business one by one. Probably start with service delivery. If you have an agency, then go to acquiring clients, marketing side, sales side, etc. Operations, you kind of figure out how to remove yourself from the business, and in the process, your company actually gets stronger. Good take by Ryan as well. To return to Max's, I think, original point, yeah, dude, the laptop lifestyle does not exist. Tim Ferriss was the first one to sell the dream. There have been many, many people since. I haven't really seen anyone doing it. There are a few people who have this. Like I said, they hack together some sort of business model that works for the short term, earns them some money, lets them travel around the world. Guess it's cool. To me, it's pretty empty at the same time, so not for me. What I have to say about Max's take and then later Ryan's. Now let's review a job ad in the e-commerce space for a media buyer role. It's from Mark Builds Brands, a client, a friend, really awesome guy. He has one of the best content about media buying and running e-commerce funnels on YouTube, so definitely check him out if you haven't already. And he says he's looking for a savage media buyer for one of his e-com brands. So he wants someone obsessive, a dog, retarded. Okay, this is the role for you. No noob, sorry, apply below. I've actually worked with Mark to find him some media buyers in the past. We even hired one guy who was really good on the interviews. 2 weeks later, he not to be the real deal, so he was a really good talker, not a really good worker. Mark and I are still friends to this day. We've tried to place some media buyers for him, but kind of whenever we have someone on our bench, we're always happy to let him know, and he's always happy to hear us out. Overall, for media buying, it is like Mark said once to me, is he's looking for someone who's dead in the eyes. Maybe that's the retarded part that he's saying. Obsessive is really what he's looking for. So someone who's going to continuously squeeze, look for efficiencies, look for edge to improve your performance. That's really the role of a media buyer these days, at least to an extent. I think the other part is to inform the creative team about the data side of the creative, right? So what's working currently, what angles we should double down on, what funnels should be doubled down on, right? So if there's a certain angle that works really well, maybe we should build a dedicated landing page. And there's a lot to the data side that a media buyer should bring to the creative teams. To me, the media buyer job is evolving a lot. So it used to be just manage accounts, adjust budgets, etc. Now, at least half of the job is actually working with the creative team, even bringing your own ideas based on what you see in the data. And then Mark says, no noobs, sorry. Fair enough. You want someone with at least some experience. To be fair, a lot of my clients are actually a lot more open to people who have been doing media buyer for 1-2 years. I don't know if that's considered a noob or not, but it's something where the skills they feel like they can teach relatively easily. Obviously, it's really good if the person has already some proven track record, knows that they like the job, but it's more about this attitude, right? So being obsessive, being a dog, and really pushing that performance. That's how people typically approach the media buying role. Let's see his application form. Because the thing with Mark is that he has a really nice following. 17K people follow him. Most of the brands that we work with don't have that following. I don't know if this is super efficient. I see these posts from Mark. I guess he should try, right? Someone that's following him could very likely be a really good media buyer and could apply. But most of the time, in my experience, it pays to hunt these people and reach out to them proactively by looking at what companies they work for, by looking at what keywords they have on their LinkedIn, and then reaching out to them. Here they're saying everything that they're not looking for. We kind of went over it last time, right? Yeah, you want to disqualify people a little bit. That doesn't mean that those people won't apply. Usually they just breeze past it. There is some description. Launching, managing, scaling meta campaigns makes sense. Testing new hooks, angles, creatives, offers, audiences makes sense. Working closely with a creative strategist for sure. Analyzing daily performance, finding what is working, giving feedback. Yes, that's a really big part of the job, and it's becoming bigger by the day. Doing funnel performance together with the team, reporting. Yep, as a job description makes a ton of sense. Fast decision making, high volume testing, performance accountability makes sense as well. Work with 7-8-figure brands. Let's help them scale profitably. Cool. Yeah, hopefully it's working for Mark. His operations manager reached out to me with this post as well. We don't currently have people on our bench, and we actually have an active media buyer search for a client, so we couldn't help this time, but best of luck to Mark. Hopefully this video maybe reaches a media buyer, and if so, definitely reach out to Mark. He's a really awesome person to work with. Carol, let's leave a link to their job description in our show notes. In 2020, I exited an 8-figure business. Since then, I've hired for more than 100 8- and 9-figure brands, poaching from names like Alex Hormozi, Tony Robbins, AG1, Golden Hippo, and many others. I've spent more than 10,000 hours doing nothing but hunting A players. 93% of them are still there a year later, close at least 80% of the searches that we take on when the industry average is 20%, and we close most of our searches in 3 weeks or less, which is way above the industry average. So in today's video, I'll share 14 principles that will let you reach a similar success rate. First point, and maybe even the most important point, is that hiring is the ultimate arbitrage. More than any skill, more than knowing AI, more than knowing the latest marketing channel, hiring people is the best skill you can possess. Why? Because you can go to a person that has that skill already, and they can jump into your business and bring results for you immediately. On average, you're going to get a 5x ROI. If you don't know something, instead of trying to figure out how to do it, think, who could do it for me. And that's going to be your key to growing really big businesses. Think about it. If you were going to do it yourself, even if you are a really brilliant individual, it's going to take you 6, sometimes even 18 months to master. What you can do instead is go to someone who's done it before, and they'll do it for you within a couple of months. It not only is it better, more relaxing, it's also simply faster. Number 2 is that having an open role is not neutral. Research shows that it costs you at least double the salary of that person. So if you were going to pay them 10K a month, it costs you at least 20K. And in my experience, actually a lot more if it's a high level role. You might be seeing, oh, here's the salary, here's the onboarding that this person will need, here's all the tech, training, taxes, whatever comes on top. That's what you see, right? That's the real cost that you see. Okay, this is going to hit my pocket. What you don't always see and what you don't always fully appreciate is the results that this person is going to bring. And like I said, it should be at least double their salary. In reality, it's closer to 5x, at least in my experience. Number 3 is that the best people never apply, and typically you need to hunt them. 73% of people who are looking for the job currently, right, they're open to opportunities, but they will not apply to a job. There are several reasons for it, mainly that the typical hiring process is quite broken. Prioritize being in the spot that they're in now over actively applying, because it just sucks, which means that the best people are not even seeing your job ad. If they do see it, they rarely will apply. And a related concept is that hiring is like throwing a party. If you post a job ad, it's essentially like telling anyone that's, oh, come to my party, it's going to be great. Typically, the people that show up are not that great. What you can do instead is then invite people, right? So that's sourcing, seeing, okay, who's done similar things, who's likely to be good, and invite them to apply. And if you extend the party analogy, those people are typically going to be a much better guest. And also you have fewer guests, right? So you don't want to have 1,000 applicants if they're not really good. You'd much rather have 10, 20, 100 really good ones rather than 1,000 that are not that great. Principle number 4 is that impressive isn't always effective. What might look good is logos, polish, confidence, status, things like that on the resume. What you should really be looking for is, have they done it before, and have they done it in a similar context to yours? The typical temptation is to go for someone who's an industry leader. Let's say you had a shoe company, you might be tempted to go for someone at Nike. Well, the thing is that Nike has been around for more than 50 years. They have tens of thousands of employees. Everyone knows their brand. So their context very likely to be very different from your shoe brand startup. So what you do instead is go for companies that are your scale, 1 step ahead of you, max 2 steps ahead of you, so that you get people who have the context. If you take them like a plant and replant them in your company, they're actually willing to thrive. If you're going to take these big names from big logos with lots of confidence, lots of status, it's very unlikely to pan out well for either side. Principle number 5 is that you should only be hiring to solve a bottleneck. There's no other reason to hire. The number 1 question we have on every intake call is, what bottleneck are we solving here? And if we aren't solving a bottleneck, I don't want to take on the search. Reason is simple. From your perspective, you're not going to be that interested in closing that role if it's not solving a real bottleneck. It might be exciting in the moment, right? Getting a talented individual doing something that's maybe bothered you for some time, but in your heart to hearts know that it's not going to actually grow your company. You're going to lose that interest pretty quickly. And then for us, that means not that great of a project. And candidates also won't be interested. They want to come to a company where they can actually move the needle, actually help. And if that's not the case with your role, then they simply won't apply. And if that's not the case with your role, they simply won't respond to our outreach. Principle number 6 is that if you can only ask one question during a screening interview, ask them about their biggest win at the previous job and ask them to break it down. Many people will have highlight wins, right? They can say, oh, I did this really impressive thing. They would have this highlight achievement, and then ask them to break it down. Unfortunately, 8 out of 10 people can't do it. This is what really separates the A players from pretenders. Many people have been around success, not necessarily having driven it. The easiest way to tell that is to ask them to break it down. If they can take you through every consideration, talk about it at least for 15 minutes, talk you through every consideration, everything that worked, that didn't work, that they tried, that they gave up on, that's a really good sign that they understand the job and could repeat that success in a slightly different context. If they can do it, then as a non-starter, pretty safely move on from those people. Principle number 7 is to always get a work sample, whether they've done it in the past, but ideally something specifically for you. People can have really nice resumes. They can even be really nice talkers on the interview, but as soon as they have to do a job, that's unfakeable. If they do a good job during the interview process, they're very, very likely to do a good job. If they can do a good job on their first assignment, what are the odds that they'll suddenly change once you hire them? And the same with past work. Past work is a bit less telling because it was different context, they might have had different priorities or things that the company valued. But if you give them a brief for a task, they can deliver even after you give some feedback, then that's a really bad sign. For us, that is good news though, because whether that person is gonna perform on the job or not. And you can, and you probably should take this principle even further if you can. And what I mean is to, if at all practically possible, ask that person to trial with you before leaving their current company. Work together on a bigger assignment, on even consulting for 1 to 2 weeks, just to see what your relationship will be like. Alex Hormozi likes to say that he's never missed an A player in the first 7 days. So you move those first 7 days before they make a life-altering decision, or at least a career-altering decision. It's like it serves as an insurance for both sides. You know for sure that you're getting the person that you were looking for. The other person knows for sure that they will last at the company and do a really good job. If you can get them to trial with you before they join, that's what you should do. Principle number 8 is to not hunt unicorns, but to stack specialists instead. If you're looking for this one person that can do it all, 10 out of 10, not miss every time, then my question to you is, why are they not founding their own company, and why are they choosing to work for you? And these people exist here and there, especially in domains. If it's a really important role, you have something really special that you're building and you can attract them, maybe 9 times out of 10, you will be disappointed. You will have someone who's saying they can do all those things really well. They appear like they can do all those things really well, but it won't quite be the case. In reality, they might be a 10 out of 10 in one thing, then an 8 out of 10 in another, 6 out of 10 in a different one. Have them work on the thing that they're 10 out of 10 at, and then maybe contribute at the things that they're 8 out of 10. And it does mean that you will have a slightly bigger team, but that team together will be able to accomplish a lot more than a single brilliant individual would. Principle number 9 is to always have an appropriate scope. The easiest to illustrate by an example, almost every e-commerce brand has at least considered looking for what they call a head of growth. For an e-commerce brand, head of growth is essentially the CEO, right? So they're responsible for customer acquisition, driving traffic, converting that traffic, all acquisition, then retention, before that upsells, product as well, right? All that could be considered growth. And then you say, hey, 150K, come be my head of growth, which really is code for 150K, but can be the CEO without the title, without the autonomy, and without the pay. And that's a really bad proposition. Best people will sniff that out immediately. Make sure you have an appropriate scope. Always want an A+ player, and you do start on the highest level up, right? If you really have the right budget, you can afford this general manager type, like a CEO or whatever you call it, but it has to be presented right. You have to have the right compensation. And sometimes you might decide, okay, I'm not yet ready to hire an A+ player for this high of a role. Go 1 level down, go 2 levels down, but always make sure you hire these A players. Principle number 10 is that your job ad should serve as a sales page. If you have a brand that people have not heard of, which is most brands, there are very few household brands, and odds are if you're watching this video, yours isn't one of them. Mine isn't for sure. If you don't have that brand, your job ad needs to take them from a stage where they've never heard of you, don't know anything about you, to a stage where they're like, okay, I'm at least willing to explore. And there's quite a few things that need to happen in that process, and that's why you treat it as a sales page. You start with a headline that's really catchy, present a really good about us section, need to describe the role, and it's probably the most important section of the entire job description, right? It has to make sense. It has to be solving a bottleneck. It has to be clear. People need to understand what even the role is about, which unfortunately is not the case for most job ads. And of course, you need to include the logistics like salary, whether you're working from the office remotely, where the team members are based, how big the team even is, etc. What I see happening a lot is that people say, hey, this role is not for newbies. You'll really be grilled. Only the best people should apply. Well, that's cool, but you also need to show that you're the best. You need to demonstrate that working for you is something that people should want to do, that they're going to be solving real bottlenecks, that they're going to be making a good move for their career. Principle 11 is that onboarding is an investment and you shouldn't approach it as a sink or swim. That's another temptation to say that, hey, if that person is so good, let him join the company, figure it all out. I figured it all out myself. Why wouldn't they? Well, it took you a lot longer to figure it out, number one. Number two, imagine if you had a racehorse. That racehorse will run really fast no matter what. But if you provide all the right nutrition, take care of it, train it appropriately, give it the right equipment. I don't know much about horses, but you get the idea. If you treat it right, it's going to do so much better for you. That's why you made this expensive hire. Make sure you actually treat it as an investment as well. Principle number 12 is to be careful about how you treat reference checks. A reference check, again, is a really tempting tool. It seems like a cheat code, right? You can ask someone else, hey, how did this person really do? The problem is that you know almost nothing about the person giving the reference. They might have a really wonderful insights and feedback. They might give you the honest picture, or they might be someone disgruntled, or they might be a friend of the hiree. There's a lot of uncertainty in reality when it comes to preferences. And don't base the entire hiring decision on the reference check. That's a really, really dangerous approach. What you should do though is gather intel. Right? What was it like working with that person from the other person's perspective, usually their managers or their colleagues, and see, okay, is there a way to shortcut our learning, right? So instead of taking several months to discover something about that person, essentially how to best work with them, can we find it out immediately? And it's almost more of an onboarding tool than it is a hiring tool, at least in my book. Principle number 13 is that you can use AI to supercharge your team. It won't replace it. What AI is really good at is following instructions and your preferred way of doing things. And it's really, really good at that. You could argue sometimes it's better than your human employees might be. It's not that great at coming up with new stuff, putting things into context, figuring out of 100 options which one is the right one to do. And there the human experience is vastly superior. Yes, use AI if you know what needs to be accomplished. When you don't really know, working with people is going to give you significantly better results. And the last thing you should know is that if you approach hiring like everyone else, most likely your role will never close. So a typical recruiter closes somewhere between 20 to 46% of the roles that they're assigned. And those are experienced recruiters. More than half of the time, they're not actually closing the search. Again, there are various reasons for it. Sometimes it's the incentive, sometimes it's just not knowing how. There is a way to close at least 80% of your roles, which is our metric, which is a metric that we're able to reach. That is why this is so important in showing you exactly how to do it. When you come up with an idea, come up with a bottleneck you want to solve with the hire, following this process will lead you to success, as opposed to if you don't follow it, your odds of success are quite low. Moving on, each week I want to break down at least one hiring framework that's really helpful to you as well. Today, I want to talk about reaching out to candidates. And I've mentioned in the past that the response rate to our outreach messages is 46%. The industry average is 25%. What this means effectively is that in typical outreach, you hear back from people who are looking for a job in that moment. When it goes up to 46%, that likely shows it's not only people looking for jobs responding, it's people who are maybe thinking about it, weren't looking actively, but somehow we were able to hook their attention. Our outreach messages generally perform really well, so I wanted to break it down for you. One of the most important parts of your outreach message is the title. They'll receive it in their LinkedIn inbox, then they can read the entire thing. It could be receiving it on their email inbox, and then the title or the subject line changes a lot. In the past, we used generic subject line, which was about your experience. I liked it because I didn't have to change it every time, and it's curiosity. Then we moved on actually to a slightly different format. The formula is position at company, question mark. So let's say CEO at Nike, whatever the role title is and the company is. And that clearly signals, okay, this is going to be a job opportunity, question mark, I think is somewhat inviting to open it up and see what it's all about. My team and I over time have decided that, okay, this is a good way to start out. Then, yeah, of course, we start with a hi, first name. That's one of the only customizations that we do in the outreach message. I'll explain why in a second. Our first line is always the same. I'm hiring position for company and what that company is. In this case, it's a sales director at a specific company, and that one happened to be a high-ticket coaching company. To me, when people see a message from a stranger, their first thought is, okay, what is this? Kind of confused. I want to understand what's going on. So we make it really, really clear. Okay, this is what's happening here. If you put yourself in the shoes of a job seeker or someone who might be a job seeker, an opportunity is always a good thing. If it's something that actually makes sense, people really welcome these messages. Why not, right? So at the worst case, you keep doing what you were doing before. At the best case, you can get a step up in your career. It should be an exciting thing to receive. And that's why we clearly say what it is. There's no trickery that needs to be involved here. Then we do a couple of lines of what the company is about. Yes, the typical copywriting advice is don't talk about yourself, but I think we're still in this mode of haven't really heard about you guys. I want to understand what's going on. We trying to be as efficient as possible in demonstrating, okay, what it is that we do and what's our success. In this case, they're helping beginner and experienced entrepreneurs start to scale their digital product businesses. In this case, it's important to say that they've had exceptional student results. because unfortunately in the high ticket space, it's not always the case. We let them know about the run rate at 8 million. It's pretty good, I would say, for a high ticket coaching company. For an e-commerce business, it would be a different story, but for a high ticket coaching one, it's quite good. Saying that, okay, we have every reason to believe that we can 8 to 10x in the next 2 to 3 years, a really ambitious company. And for some people, it's like, awesome, we're going to be growing. This is great. For some people, they kind of sense that, okay, this is going to be really intense, not for me. And that's good filter out for the people that don't want to be in that environment, which is fine, but not a fit for this company. That's a good filter that we use there. And here we start talking about the other part that to me is really, really important. It's the bottleneck in the company. In this case, they didn't really have top-notch sales management, close rate, cash collected for a closer, deals per closer, all could be better. That's the right candidate will know, yes, there are certain metrics that you should be hitting. If you're not hitting them, very likely it is a sales management issue. And then we explain why. So our sales team isn't held accountable. The standards and the SOPs are there. We've set them up, but it needs leadership, right? So the leadership is the missing piece. And once again, tell them what the bottleneck is and what we're missing. And if the person has the leadership, they know, okay, I can do this. If they like the brand as well, right? When they check it out, they're like, oh, that's amazing. Then we use a line that we have in almost every outreach message, which is that your experience could be just what we're looking for or a version of that. Again, that's the only personalization that we do. Why? Because if the opportunity is really relevant, we have a lot of people responding. So personalization is not something candidates necessarily care about if the opportunity is really relevant. And our job is to select people who will see this as a really relevant opportunity. So then we don't need to essentially waste time on the personalization because we do get really good response rates without it. And here, in this case, we throw in a line that's in the long term, you could throw into the CEO of the company if you're up for it. And that's definitely the case, right? For a high ticket coaching company, sales is such a massive part. At the same time, if someone thrives in the sales management role, good for them. They can stay there and crush it for the company that way. But we also let them know that the company is fully remote and always will be. That's another important aspect, especially for people who are used to commuting into their office. They want to work remotely, or if someone's been working remotely, they want to stay that way. So that's something we throw in there. If your company is working from the office, we say that as well. We give address or at least a part of the city that the office is in so that they know, okay, I can't commit to this. I wouldn't be working here. Okay, that's fine. We want to be working with people from the office, and then we filter them out immediately. Again, we don't waste your time with people who wouldn't be fits in the first place. Then here we had a kind of a creative salary structure, right? 14 to 18K a month, but as a percentage of the front end cash collected. We wanted to be clear about that. Typically, you don't need to be that creative. You say, hey, here's the base salary. There's a performance bonus as well. If you want to, you can let them know what that bonus is. If there's some equity consideration for the higher end roles, you let them know as well. You want to be really clear as to what they can expect to. And then the final thing we do is put in another question. Typically, can I send you more information so that it's really easy to say yes to? Again, put yourself in the shoes of the candidates. They are still maybe taken aback. They didn't expect this message. So you want to make it really easy for them to respond. And they'll just say, yes, I want to receive more information. And then you send it. In the meantime, they will keep thinking about the opportunity, right? You reel them in a little bit, drip a bit more information, then you get on the call and make it digestible. So that's the purpose of that last question. And that's why we put it there. So that's the outreach message. It's not rocket science, but every line of the outreach message has a purpose. It is a really important part of the process, right? Because after you've selected the right people, you want them to respond as well. And we hear it time and time again is that typically I don't respond to recruiters, but somehow this message got my attention. Well, this is why, right? And this is what you want to happen. If you want to get really good response rates, and if you want to especially hear back from the best candidates, this is how. Next up, I wanted to give you a quick case study of how we're currently hiring a lead designer for a 9-figure e-commerce company. The brief there was quite simple. They're improving their funnels. They're building a lot of them. They need someone on the design side who really understands conversion, can build direct response funnels. There would be a tech team helping them implement it. They obviously use lots of AI. For us, we filled this role many times over, and it proved to be a pretty kind of exemplary process. When everything goes right, this is exactly how it should go. So I wanted to take you through the stats and all the steps that we took to get there. But so far, we've had 1 test assignment submission that the client has absolutely loved. There are 3 more people that we're waiting test assignments for. There are many more people we will be approaching, and they're ready to hire at least 2 people for this role. Just to give you an idea of how it all looks and what you can expect if you're doing your hiring process process, right? Of course, as always, we asked all the questions about the brand, about the role, about the team, everything we should know to have the proper context, everything a candidate might ask. We sourced a bunch of people, and this time it was really easy, right? There are, I need to check the exact number, but somewhere between 100 and 150 direct response brands that are working at a serious scale in the US market. We put them all in our LinkedIn filter and went through the people that have worked as designers for them. And those people have by far the best chance to drive really meaningful conversions. That's something they've worked on. That's something they perfected, where they've had lots of disappointments already and they know what not to do as well, as opposed to someone else who's a designer, right? There's probably hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people like that in the States alone, probably hundreds of thousands that would be designers. Only a small percentage of them really understand direct response. And once again, it makes sense to invite people who have done it before and are likely to do a really good job. That's exactly what we did. So far in the process, reached out to 74 people. We'll be reaching out to maybe 50 more. It does take some time to properly source these people. We've gotten a 32% response rate from the people we've approached. That's exactly what we expect. 18% of them have agreed to conversations with our team, so the screening interview. 15% is our normal benchmark, so also right around where we wanted. One thing I will say for designer roles specifically, you want to check their portfolio. If you see type of funnels that you like on the portfolio, it's almost guaranteed to be a good conversation. If they haven't quite done it or done what you're looking them to do, it's probably not going to be the best conversations, probably not going to be on target. And from there, I mentioned out of those 18, so far we've presented 4, moving them to the follow-up interview. The hiring manager has had them and is moving them to the test assignment stage. One submission, it does look quite promising on that end. Within a couple of weeks, they'll have likely 2 or maybe even more designers that can really drive conversion for them. So really awesome. Congrats to the client. And I'm also really proud of the team. From my perspective, I've given them high-level guidance and they've just gone to work and have done a tremendous job. Really proud of them as well. Unfortunately, in recruitment, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In this past week, there are 2 instances where we dropped the ball as recruiters, and I want to talk about them again from the purpose of learning from it and so that you not make the same mistake. And the biggest one was where we had a candidate the biggest one was with a candidate that we're really hopeful for. They had the first interview hiring team. They liked each other. Moving on, we weren't quite sure how to test the skills of that person. It is a new role for the company. It's slightly new role for us as well. And we kind of came up with the idea, hey, let's present all our problems, see what the person says. If she can solve it, then perfect, right? She can explain what she do and it is making sense and it is something we see being a success. Let's go for it. If not really, we need to rethink, maybe look at a few other candidates. Unfortunately, where we dropped the call was in presentation of this idea. That's something I agreed with the hiring team. I asked my recruiter, hey, please set up the call. I failed to tell him that this is what we want to do on the call. So the candidate didn't know coming into the call. On the call as well, it wasn't presented in the best way. The hiring manager said, hey, we want to get a free consultation from you. And she got really defensive, rightfully so. Why would you give a free consultation to someone that is not paying you any money? And typically, the funny thing is that especially that client, but all of our clients are quite willing to pay for any sort of work that we are expecting out of candidates. But here we thought, okay, it's just 1 hour. It's a conversation about our issues. Maybe it's not necessary. In the future, we will offer payment just to avoid kind of any misunderstandings. But it really was a misunderstanding when she felt, okay, we're asking for too much information. At the same time, client held their own and they should have. How can you hire someone without knowing that they can actually solve their problem? But to me, it really was a communication thing. And the thing that I tell myself, and I think it's true, is that it likely would not have been a culture fit anyway. If someone gets offended when the intentions really were there and they, at least after the fact, made their best to explain what they were thinking, but the person wasn't willing to give them credit, probably wouldn't have been a fit anyway. Maybe she had some doubts about the opportunity, that candidate's not gonna pan out. Yeah, the learning point for our team is that always set up whatever you're doing. You can be creative with your methods. That's a bit unconventional. Just making sure you set it up properly. And if you listen to what candidate has to say, when they say, oh, I'm not fully comfortable with that, then you say, well, what if we did it this way, right? Or we did it differently? That's what we'll be doing in the future. And there's a related example. Fortunately, it wasn't as catastrophic. It was a candidate we wouldn't have moved along with anyway. Essentially, hiring manager was looking for someone really smart. They felt like they couldn't quite capture whether they are smart, switched on with numbers, able to grasp strategy just by asking what they've done in the past. So he decided to pull out Brain Teaser. Brain Teaser is a weird math problem. So it could be how many gas stations there are in the United States, and then you ask that person to estimate using reasonable assumptions. Could ask how many golf balls to fit into a bus, things like that. Us as recruiters on the team kind of recoiled. The reason is that it's something that Google used to do, but more than a decade ago, they said, okay, this is not something that actually predicts success. And I think it's become kind of a meme in the hiring world that, okay, if someone is using this in their hiring process, they likely don't know what they're doing because they're using something that's generally agreed to be unpredictable. At the same time, I totally understand the hiring manager. He just simply doesn't want to work with someone that he has to hold his hand for pretty simple brain teasers or whatever you call them. And this candidate failed, and I think he was discarded then for the right reasons. And again, what we agreed on in the end, the hiring manager said, no, I need to know this thing. I don't care if I come across cringe. I don't care if I come across like Michael Scott. I'm fine with that. I just need to find that information. I think what they'll find with the candidates in the future is that they'll pretty easily give a reasonable answer for the brain teaser. This was just someone we shouldn't have moved on to the stage where they can use simple logic, in all honesty. What I told him is say, if you really want to use this, you can get away with a lot if you introduce it properly. In his case, he would say, hey, I know that this is not generally accepted. I do have a reason for this, kind of see how you approach math, to see how you approach strategy. To me, it is telling. That's why I'd like to ask this question. Maybe I'll not end up using it. That's totally fine, but I do want to ask this question for my peace of mind. And then he can go on and ask his brain teaser. The overall takeaway and the big lesson for us this week is if you do creative hiring method, make sure you introduce it properly and explain your rationale and how you'll be using it. We can just go for it. And if the candidate sees that you have the right approach and the right spirit and why you're asking that question, they'll be much more willing to go along with it. And our last segment is student and sensei. Charles, even though he mostly works on producing content and social media, is learning a ton about headhunting and hiring, and he usually has some really good questions. We'll let Charles, the student, learn from me, presumably the sensei. So let's hear his question. I'll give you my best answer.
So my question this time gonna be, you are a founder who became a headhunter. Most recruiters have never built a company. When you sit across from a founder who is hiring, what do you see that career recruiter would completely miss?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I appreciate that one. I think there are 4 distinct things that a career recruiter might miss compared to someone who's been a founder like myself. Number 1 is the importance of speed. Every time there's a role that's open, burning money, you're not capitalizing on the impact that the right person will have in this role. Every founder naturally has the urgency. Most of the recruiters that I work with are kind of laid back and they're like, okay, well, it's going to take some time. Don't worry about it. Stop almost getting on my nerves. We're going to fill it when we're going to fill it. To me, there's massive urgency because I know how much it costs not to have that role filled. And it's not my company, of course, that we're filling the role for, but I feel the urgency nonetheless because I know that, okay, if we're not filling this, we're missing out on opportunity. Number 1 is that we go really fast. The number 2 thing, and that's a specific quote I've seen from a recruiter, is that I can't own the success metric of the hire. So our metric is 93% of the hires are there 12 months later. And the recruiter goes, well, what if it's a bad manager? It's not all on me. I say, yes, there are going to be bad managers, probably 7% of the time, right? Or there are going to be mistakes that you make. That's totally fine, but you can still directionally impact the success. Yes, that success will depend on who you're working with, but also be careful to select the right type of clients and situations where you can actually help and drive impact. Absolutely is your responsibility to make sure that people that you hire are actually successful, that they're 12 months later. And for that reason, I also put our incentive structure. We have a 12-month. For that reason, I put a certain incentive structure in place for us. It's kind of works against us occasionally, right? So we have a 12-month guarantee. Sometimes we have to replace people 11 months in. But for me, that's fine because we then are aligned with the founder, what's important in their business, and we're incentivized to bring them the right solution, not only a solution that will do in that moment when they're really interested in hiring. It's going to work in the long term. Another thing I hear from recruiters is that, well, we can't close this role. You're asking for too much. What are you doing? Again, kind of blaming the hiring manager. As a founder, I know that there always is a solution, right? So if someone brings you a problem, there is a solution that's realistic. And you keep asking, hey, what if we do this? What if we did the other thing? Just to make sure that you can actually deliver on solving their problem, also promising something that's realistic. So you have that creativity, you know that there really are no rules or they're very loose rules. As long as you're actually solving the problem, you can be quite creative. And that's why I tell my team, we're not order takers, we are consultants. Our job is to solve your business problem, not necessarily drive you a certain person, certain years of experience or credentials. We always ask, but why do you need it? What is the real problem? What is the bottleneck that we're solving? And the last thing I hear from the career recruiters, at least not the good ones, is that them complaining about the tough market. Yes, of course, there are certain times when it really can be a tough market, but overall, there are things in your control that you can do. There are ways to stand out. The bar is quite low for recruiters. If you do better, you're going to have better results. And a metric that proves this to me is our response rate from the candidates, right? I've mentioned that industry, on average, you get 25% response rate. We get 46, and that's because you do certain things better. You explain what the world really is about. You approach the right people, and there are absolutely things in your control, and you can beat the market even if it's a tough one. There are certain things that career recruiters will miss because they haven't maybe had the pressure of being a founder of a company. And that's why I really enjoy working with founders and bringing them solutions that potentially other recruiters couldn't. That's it for today's episode of the A Player Show. Remember, if you have a key role and if you want an expert to fill it for you, book a call. The link's in the description. But either way, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.